all of what I have just said existed. And worse than that, the Rasul ﷺ himself was spit at, cursed, lied about, rumored about, stomped on, and everything that you can imagine. Imagine the anxiety, the pressure, the emotions. And now, on one of those days, one of the Sahaba came to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Khabbab ibn al-Arat, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, ud'u lana, istaghfir lana, فوالله إن أحدنا لا يستطيع أن يقضي حاجته إلا وسلاحه بيده. He comes to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, Ya Rasulullah, make dua for us. Ask Allah to bring down the victory. Wallahi, one of us cannot answer to nature without the weapon in his hand. And this is a man that was extremely tortured to a degree that has never been seen before. They will boil the charcoals and lay him on them until his flesh turned them off. And all he's asking for is dua. The basic necessities of a Muslim. And all he's wishing for is victory. The dream of every Muslim. The Rasul ﷺ was leaning, he stood up. And you can see in his face disappointment, dislike of the approach of Al-Khabbab, disapproval of what he just did. What did he do? He asked for dua. It wasn't that, but it was the motivation behind it. They got the Rasul ﷺ disappointed. He said, إِنَّكُمْ قَوْمٌ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. You are people that are hasty. In the nations before, a man will be brought, put in the ditch, cut in half. He will not retreat or his faith. He will not give up his faith. But you are a nation that is hasty. You are people that are hasty. You're in a rush. It's not the concept of dua, it's that Al-Khabbab lost hope, lost patience, wanted that victory to come quicker. Forgot that Allah Ta'ala calculates everything and brings it at its time. Everything that Allah does is precise and for the best. There has never been a nation that has been tortured and abused more so than Bani Israel. Imagine. Their children were killed at birth. Their women were taken for pleasure. And whatever man is alive is enslaved. And you can imagine the kind of slavery just by looking at the pyramids that we see today. And it wasn't for one generation or two. It was for generations. And by whom? There has never been a greater dictator, a bigger dictator, or more abusive government than the governments of the pharaohs. إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ لَعَالٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Allah Ta'ala says, إِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ لَعَالٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ. He is the extremist of all dictators. When the Rasul ﷺ wanted to describe Amr ibn Hisham during the battle of Badr, he said, that is Fir'aun هذه الأمة. That is the Pharaoh of this nation, of this ummah. Because he's the example, the ideal example of the worst of the worst. There's no one that has claimed to be the Lord himself except him. مَا عَلِمْتُ لَكُمْ مِنْ إِلَهٍ غَيْرِهِ. to an extent that the people of Israel, Bani Israel, thought it to be the natural means of their life. Torture continuously. That's what they said to Musa. أُذِينَا مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ تَأْتِيَنَا وَمِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جِئْتَنَا. We've been tortured throughout. There's nothing new that you're telling us right now. Prior to the birth of Musa, Allah Ta'ala said and explained His will vividly. وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ الْوَارِثِينَ. And we want to bring our minna, our gifts, our bounties to those that have been aggressed on. And we will have them inherit the land. And we will empower them. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. And there's nothing that can stand in His way. إِنَّمَا أَمْرُنَا إِذَا أَرَدْنَا أَن نَقُولَ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُنْ. And indeed, if we will something, then all we need to say is be, and it is. Nothing can stand in front of it or between it. In the moment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that, what would you assume? That immediately, Bani Israel will be empowered, they will inherit the land, and they will show Fir'aun and his people what they have been fearing. وَنُرِيَ فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَجُنُودَهُمَا مَا كَانُوا يَحْذَرُونَ. But it didn't happen like that. After Allah Ta'ala said this, He said to Musa, to the mother of Musa, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ Musa أَنْ أَرْضِعِيهِ. Breastfeed him. And if you fear for his life, let him go and flow in the river. And he went and left and was raised by his arch enemy, Fir'aun. And after that, he fled Egypt, went to Madian, came back. That debate with Fir'aun throughout all those years, Bisini, 40 years before Fir'aun saw his fate. After Allah Ta'ala has said, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نُمِنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. 40 years. It didn't happen immediately or overnight or a year or so. 40 years. And before they inherited the land, and not the land of Egypt, but the land in Palestine, it took them another 40 years plus as they were lost in the desert. يَتِيهُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ 40 سَنَةً يَتِيهُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. 80 years from the moment that Allah Ta'ala said, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. We live at a time where we see a lot of calamities and tragedies. We see a lot of massacres and bloodshed. And many of us, if not all of us, wonder why Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is just sitting back and not doing anything. Waiting for victory. And we see massages throughout the world, and their imams and their prayers and musallis raise their hands in the sky. Ya Allah! أرنا في أعدائك يوما أسودا وأنزل لنا النصر المكين. Let us see what you do with your enemies and bring down the victory. And some of us would wonder, what happened? Where's that victory? Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not responded to our dua? Because He does in His own time. He does not rush because you're in a hurry. He does not become hasty because you have no patience. He will do what He needs to do at His time, for reasons He only knows, and reasons that we have witnessed throughout history of why. Let me just give you a small example. After the Battle of Uhud, 70 of the Sahabas were killed during this battle. Amongst them, Hamza, Mus'ab, Abdullah ibn Haram, and many others. And the Rasul ﷺ was hurt. And there was pain amongst many. And the Rasul ﷺ was so hurt that in his sujood, he was saying, Allahumma alayka bi Abi Sufyan, wa Khalid, wa Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, Amr ibn al-As. He was making dua on individuals that caused the defeat of the Muslims, that caused that musibah. أَوَلَمَّا أَصَابَتْكُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَدْ أَصَبْتُمْ مِثْلَهَا. Allah Ta'ala named that battle musibah. When they saw that musibah, Rasul himself was so hurt that he was making the dua. Imagine if Allah had answered his dua, and his dua is never rejected. What would have happened? What would you and I have lost? Men like Khalid ibn al-Walid that became Saifullah al-Mastoor. Men like Amr ibn al-As that carried Islam to Egypt that we know today in Palestine. You don't know what's behind the scenes or what tomorrow brings. The Mongolians massacred Muslims throughout their way, all the way beyond Afghanistan until they came to Egypt. They went back and carried Islam to the nations of many Muslims that I see in this masjid today as those who are coming from the subcontinents. If they were completely destroyed, where would you have been today? Those who are from Iraq or Iran, it was Khalid that brought Islam to that part of the world. We would have lost so much because of moments of pain. Allah Ta'ala does not function like that. وَلَوْ يُؤَاخِذُ اللَّهُ النَّاسَ بِمَا كَسَبُوا مَا تَرَكَ عَلَى ظَهْرِهَا مِنْ دَابَّةٍ. If Allah Ta'ala was to take people accountable because of what they have done, none would have survived. None, including you and I. None would have survived. SubhanAllah. Umar ibn al-Khattab, he walked out of his home with his sword, willing to kill the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, became al-Fawd. He deserved at that moment that he wished to kill, to be killed. It became one of the greatest that we have known in our history. That's how it works. Your pain is felt. What we witness today in Syria, in the chaos in the streets of Egypt, are matters that has to happen for the change to come. It is not a watch and see that Allah does. But it's like that 80 years it took for Bani Israel eventually to have a state, even though the only ones that deserved it were the few of them. As in the Hadith, they were equivalent to the number of Sahaba during the Battle of Badr. And when they walked out of Egypt, there were more than 650,000. One of the wisdoms of Allah Ta'ala, delaying the answer, is He filters our communities, filters our society, filters our ummah, brings out and brushes out and brooms out those who do not deserve to see the victory with their eyes or feel it with their hands. Because they were never part of it in the first place. Everybody claims victory when things are at ease. But when things are kind of trembling and the waves are coming from one side to another, everybody says, Ya Allah. Then they walk away. فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعَوُا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ قَالُوا أَلَمْ نَكُنْ مَعَكُمْ. When things become, they see all the jewelries and stuff, then they fight for the world. أَلَمْ نَكُنْ مَعَكُمْ. SubhanAllah, weren't we with you? One of the things that Allah Ta'ala does in the later that He filters our communities. We've seen this in small portions, as well as we've seen it on a bigger capacity. In small communities, they fight at times where there's no reason to fight, but Allah Ta'ala created that atmosphere to filter our lives. During the Battle of Badr, if it was not for that musibah, the Sahaba would not have known who Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul was. And 1/3 of the army retreated and left the Rasul ﷺ and his Sahaba at Uhud. That's just a means of filtering. And it's a blessing for you and I. Wallahi, it's a blessing. It keeps you connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It keeps you intact. Trials in your life is to keep you alert that you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's natural in a human being when you're in fear, when there's some kind of unease in your life, you're more in tune to say, Ya Allah. And when you think things are going your way, all of a sudden you assume that it was because of what I did and what I have earned. إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. I was giving it to you because of my intellect. One other thought, the man came to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Ya Rasulullah, make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes me rich. But you're good. You're okay where you're at. No, I want to be rich. He insisted, and Allah Ta'ala blessed him with wealth. Became one of the richest men. When he would ask for zakah, why would I give my money to those who did not earn it? I worked extremely hard for this. It is mine. Why would I give it away? When you have a child in your life that is sick, you make dua and you come to the Masjid, Imam, please make dua because my child is sick or my mother and father is sick. And once everyone is okay in your family, you don't even come for something. You wake up at night for a test that you're taking to get your board or your medical license or just to pass high school. And you don't wake up at night for the test that Allah will ask you alone while you're standing alone. What have you done? Do you see? So part of the blessings that Allah Ta'ala keeps us alert and attached to Him. So we don't all of a sudden forget and become dependent on ourselves when we are in reality weak. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. The greatest level of ibadah, the greatest profession that you can have and status that you can claim is that you are Abdullah. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده. The Rasul has never been praised more better than when Allah Ta'ala acknowledged him as his servant. But it's that trials and tragedies that elevated the Rasul so much. He was offered to become a king, to become rich. He said that I'd rather be a miskin. I eat that one day, and I don't another. He's thankful when he eats. He's patient when he's not. Do you see? Even the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that was his wish. Never would he forget. Never would he have a lapse of mind. Aisha said one day about Abdurrahman ibn Auf, she said, I heard the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that Abdurrahman ibn Auf would be amongst the last to get into Jannah of the Sahaba. He heard, he said, why is that? Because there was so much wealth that he had to answer to it. So immediately he said, I'm donating half of my wealth for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Since that's the cause of my delay, I give it up. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not fear for this ummah, its trials. Wallahi, we get stronger. We get united when we are tested. But he feared for this ummah prosperity, which many of us think that's the level line of acceptance by Allah Ta'ala. He said, لَا الْفَقْرُ أَخْشَى عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ أَخْشَى عَلَيْكُمُ الدُّنْيَا فتتنافسوا فيها كما تنافس فيها من كان قبلكم فتهلككم كما أهلكتكم. I do not fear for you poverty, but I fear for you the dunya, prosperity. Then you will compete in it, and it will destroy you as it did the nations before you. What's happening around the world in our countries, we are saddened by it. And we should never stop making dua, but never stop losing hope. لا تيأسوا من روح الله. إنما ييأس من روح الله إلا القوم الخاسرون. So we do not lose hope. Wallahi, Allah Ta'ala will take care of our brothers and sisters. In Syria, if we take care of what we need to do. He will unite our brothers in Egypt if we start within ourselves and show our unity with them. He will bring the best to the people of Yemen, in Tunisia, in Libya, and now Iraq. He will make a better nation of Pakistan, a unity between the subcontinents, and who knows, maybe victory is closer than you and I think today. All we need to do is trust that the one that controls is not forgotten. أقول ما تسمعون وأستغفر الله لكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده تعالى ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. ثم أما بعد. One of the amazing hadith that I have read in my life is where the Rasul ﷺ says, if the day of judgment was to be tomorrow, imagine the end of mankind and the universe of this life, the end of this world. And he said, and in your hand is a plant, a seed. It's a planted. There's not even enough time for it to grow. You know that tomorrow the angel will blow the horn and everything is done. دكت الأرض دكا دكا. The mountains will not be able to be settled. وترى الجبال تحسبها جامدة وهي تمر مر السحاب. But you still plant the seed. Because a Muslim never stops or gives up or loses hope. A Muslim is always a builder, a provider, a source of energy, a source of giving, not just taking. A Muslim vibrates everything around him. That's why they used to say it's like the rain. Wherever it drops, it benefits. So we never stop. And we're not consumed of our losses to forget what we are to build for tomorrow. So as we lose, we build. During the battle of Uhud, when the Rasul ﷺ and the Muslims returned to Medina with their injuries and wounds, the angel Jibreel came to the Rasul ﷺ. He said, "You've put down your shield, for the angels have not." He stood up, called only those who attended the battle of Uhud with all of their injuries and wounds. And they marched after Quraysh, limping. And they tasted the victory at Hamra al-Asad. Because wounds and injuries does not allow us to give up. One of the men that was fighting during the battle of Uhud, the Rasul said to the Sahaba, they said, "We wish we were like him." He said, "He's in hell because he gave up. When he got injured, he couldn't bear the pain. So he stabbed himself to death." We don't give up. Our ummah always builds. When our community thinks that it has exhausted its resources, we see another community stand up to build again. And it will succeed. Our brothers in Allen understands that the communities around the DFW area, in the minds of some, have exhausted all of their resources. But the faith that they have in their heart told them that they still need to build. And they will build their own masjid. They bought the land and they have finished breaking ground. In the next phase, they're already on their way. You can say here in Epic, we've exhausted everything that we have. And likewise, they'll say in Irving or Arlington or Fort Worth. But throughout the years I've been in DFW area, we've never exhausted the resources of the one that owns all the treasures of the world. Because his resources never exhaust. If every human being was to ask his wish, it would not be equivalent to a needle being dipped in the ocean and then brought out. What would that needle carry of water from an ocean? So our brothers in Allen trust that there's much that they can have and find in our community. On February the 23rd, to come to an end on my book, on February the 23rd, they will have their major fundraising dinner. All of you are invited. We're not doing a fundraiser today, but they're inviting you to come to their fundraiser, whether you pay or you're just there. Just show up. February the 23rd at the Hotel Embassy Suites in Frisco. Mark on your calendar that I will show support for our brothers and sisters in Allen. Whether you pay or not, his resources will finish the project. I promise you that. But it will be very well, nice and dandy if you come Yom Qiyamah and say, I had something to do with it. Do you see what I'm saying? It will be really on your side of benefit that you come and say, I have partnered in building a masjid. Where's my castle in Masjid? You promised a mansion and a castle for one that partnered in building a masjid. I did with the brothers in Allen as I did in our own masjid in Epic. Where's my mansion and where's my castle? You can claim it by attending, inshallah, on February the 23rd. Repeat again, February the 23rd at Embassy Suites in Frisco. Allahumma la tada'lana dhanban illa ghafarta, wa la hamma illa farajta, wa la daynan illa qadayta, wa la